Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given.
The neighbor boys were over, and he always tries to play. Luke is 3, and they're like 7, 8, and 9. And so they don't let him play, and so he peed in their shoes while they were on the trampoline.
Oh,
and they're like, Mom, Luke peed in our shoes.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Brenda J. Today, I'm so excited to say that I have my cousin, Ashley Manning, on the show. Ashley is a wife and a mother of 4 and has her own floral business called Pretty Things by A.E. Manning. She's the founder of the Valentine's Day Widow Outreach Project, which is held each year in Charlotte, North Carolina, and is growing each year. She was featured last year in People magazine and all over the news for this amazing project. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Well, Ashley is one of the most compassionate, kind, loving people I know. I watch her posts and I think, how does she have the strength to do all this with 4 small kids? But then the Lord starts tugging on my heartstrings, and he shows me Luke 4:18. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon us, because he has anointed us to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, recovering sight to the blind, and set liberty to those who are oppressed. There are several scriptures supporting widows. For example, Timothy 5, honor widows, etc. Visit orphans and widows in their affliction, James 1:27. I realize to God, this is all of our callings. It's definitely the heart of hanging on to hope. The greatest commandment is Matthew 22:37. Love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and mind, then love your neighbor as yourself. We are to love God, love ourselves, and love others. John 13:34, love one another as I have loved you. Loving others is healing, and loving others in our communities and volunteering is very healing. And just before we get started with the podcast, last year, Ashley had her sister deliver my mother flowers. And just so you know, Ashley, my mother was so touched, and I just want to thank you so much for that, for thinking of my mom.
Oh, that makes me so happy. And my other aunts there and outside of Pittsburgh that unfortunately were widowed way too young.
Yeah. And we have the greatest aunts, don't we?
We do.
Yeah.
I can only think of Aunt Darlene's enormous dimples when she got her flowers.
Yeah, my mom was just so touched she couldn't stop talking about it. So
well, she's going to get them this year again because we made sure of it. So hopefully
we can
it means as much to her this year.
We can talk about it on this podcast because my mom doesn't have a computer or internet or anything, so we can say whatever we want about her. She'll never hear it.
Good old Aunt Fessy.
Hi, Ashley. This is Karen. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, thank you. So nice to meet you too.
Yes, and I've heard so much about you through Brenda, and I can't wait to tell our listeners a little of your background and how it led up to the Valentine's Day Widow Project. So would you mind sharing a little bit of your background? And I love that you do this. I think it's great.
Well, yeah, of course. I have 4 children. They are 11, 9, 7, and 3. And about 2.5, 3 years ago, kind of in the midst of COVID, I started making flower arrangements for friends, and that kind of turned into a small business, which was probably more of therapy for being at home all the time with 4 kids. And it was really good for me to have something that was my own. And that year, when the schools all shut down, I brought flowers on Valentine's Day to I guess Marky was probably 4 or 5 then, to his teacher who was a widow. And then the world shut down. That was February, March, everything was closed. The teachers came by and did a drive-by end of year celebration in the driveway. And she gave me a letter, and it was so well written, and it just made me realize how much that very small gesture, on that day meant to her. And I think in my heart that God gave me my small business of pretty things because he knew I needed a platform to be able to start this widow ministry. And that was the platform that I have. So slowly I'm going further away from the daily flowers and more into this outreach. So the first year I thought we would maybe do 40 or 50 widows, and I didn't even know what to expect, to be honest with you. But as money was coming in nominations, within a few weeks we had 125 in the Charlotte area.
Wow.
Then last year we had 400, and that's kind of when all the news took off. And I don't know how in the world all these people knew about it, the power of the internet, because I didn't tell anybody. Anytime I looked at my phone and a number was coming in from New York or Los Angeles, I'm like, oh boy, I wonder who this is. And then this year I really had hoped to have more time between last year and this year to grow it, but I had a rough year health wise. And even with all of that being said and done, we're still able to do our goal is 800, and we're just about there right now.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So
So do you have help with people helping you with that, or are you doing that all yourself?
Oh, yeah. So the first year when I did it, pretty much anybody that texted me or emailed me or I met at the grocery store or all these various ways, I would write their name down, and then I would try to figure out, now I wonder who that was, and then go back. And, I didn't have addresses all together. And I'm telling you, I had these names all over Instagram messages, Facebook messages, personal email, text. And the day it just grew so quickly that the day of the event, I gave these two girls my phone and I said, this is my password. You're just going to have to find all the addresses. They're in all these places. And they almost killed me. So these girls are, amazing, talented business women, and they have really kept me focused and kept things a lot more streamlined. So we have a great Google document that gives us all the information that we need for the widows. Like, you get to a development and there's a gate there and you can't get in there when you're delivering them. So it says, do you have a gate? We give our widows, we give them a big flower arrangement, and then a bunch of local vendors donate gifts, and we give them a bottle of wine. Well, we found out last year some people don't want the wine. So we and now have a thing on our form that says, would you like wine in your gift bag? Just a lot of little things we've learned along the way. But to answer your question, I have a ton of help. And the coolest thing about it is that the volunteer list fills up each year before the nominations or the money is all in. People are just super excited to help and to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's such a great thing.
That's like December, the whole month of November, starting November and December is for us with helping domestic violence victims. The whole month is crazy.
Or my sister's a widow, so I could call you and have you send and donate and have you send flowers to my sister.
Yeah. Well, I have this form, and it's interesting. Social media has really allowed this to happen, just to be able to connect with people. And we call it a nomination, but it's not necessarily like we're vetting anybody. We just need to know, are they close enough, to our delivery area? I might have somebody from Minnesota write in. So we keep it to the Charlotte area. But then if I have drivers or volunteers that say, hey, I'm willing to drive out to Shelby, North Carolina, which is over an hour away, then if I have nominations from that city come in, I can send things that way. So the first year it was way more concentrated on where we are. We're about an hour in each direction of service.
Wow,
so
that's great.
Yeah. So all you would do if you were, local to this area, you would fill in the form, and not everybody makes a donation, and that's fine. I remember when I was younger, I was a missionary several times in Haiti. And at that time in my life, I was young and I had all the time. And I didn't have necessarily money, and I wasn't like a doctor or anything, but I was able to go and do a lot of the more menial tasks. As I've gotten older, time seems to be the most valuable thing. And so it's easier sometimes to donate money or,
Right.
donate my talent. But the time, treasure, and talent is so important for this to be successful. And it's all important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Each one.
Last year was a really difficult year for you, but you still persevered and so many supported the project. Did you want to talk about the hardships you've had to endure during this project and how you were able to press through and finish strong?
Yeah. As a mom of little kids, we can lay in bed and think about the worst things that could happen to our kids or ourselves, and never in a million years did I imagine the year that I had could have happened. And basically about 15 months ago, my 6-year-old at the time punched me in my eye, kind of playfully, like jabbing, and made contact. And that escalated into a retinal tear and surgery after surgery. And I have a rare disorder where my body tries to really hard to fix things. And and within my eye, it's called PVR. It's proliferative vitreal retinopathy. And so every time they would fix my retina, it would heal so fast that it would detach again from the scar tissue. And I think over the course of 10 months, I had 8 surgeries. And then at the very end, my retina is now attached, and I did some experimental therapy where they injected methotrexate, which is a chemotherapy drug, into my eyeball to try to get this PVR from stopping, to try to make the cells stop trying to repair themselves. And all the stuff that we did to save my retina worked. But the one day I woke up and I had very little vision left, but I did have a little bit, and everything was gray. I saw my doctor. I thought, oh no, I tore, my retina detached again. And at that point, we were just trying to keep everything healthy in there. But my optic nerve seems to have given out just after so much trauma and surgery. So your vision is really important, and the loss of vision is really hard. And a friend of mine sent an article to me about vision loss and of your senses. Your vision is the most important, tied to your quality of life. Mm-hmm. And I struggled a lot with guilt because I'm laying there in terrible pain. Like, I was on so much pain medicine, I couldn't get out of bed. And it just felt, there were times I'm like, just take it out. Just take it. I can't handle the pain anymore. But I knew, like, I'm going to get out of bed. Right. There are moms, and one of our dear aunts that passed away from cancer. She knew she wasn't going to get out of bed, Aunt Sandra. And so I felt this tremendous guilt of not allowing myself to feel bad for myself. But it was really, really, really hard.
There were times you couldn't even move for how many hours at a time after?
Oh, Lord. Well, each time I had a vitrectomy, which I had 4 of them, they basically take the vitreous out of your eye, which is like the jelly, and they have to fill it with something so that the eye doesn't collapse. So they fill it with either gas or oil. And if you imagine yourself laying face down, that bubble that they have in there is going to use gravity to be pushed up and hold your retina in place. And they have to do that each time. And then you have to lay down in that position, face down.
Yes. So I would have to lay face down each time after the surgery for 24 hours a day. I could get up once an hour to use the restroom, and then I could get up 15 minutes 3 times to eat. But that was it. And the rest of the time you had to be face down. So you can get to a really dark place. After the second one, I just laid there. I didn't have music on. I did not have the lights on. I did not have anything. So I had gotten myself into a very, very dark place. And the thing that's really amazing about this, widow outreach is that I really was vulnerable on my social media. Like, I look back now and I think, man, should I delete these? Like, this sounds awful. But I was that sad and I was that depressed. And the people, that are my clients and my community, they were so, so, so good to me, and it's like, you see these people that you think are the most happy and have it all together and, beautiful family. And then they commit suicide and you're like, wait, what happened here? And the truth is, like, a lot of people are afraid to expose their, our deficiencies and expose our hurt. And I think that by being vocal about it, I was able to, the people that supported me got me through it. And the same people, like, I don't know if I wouldn't have had my community that I've made from this widow organization. I don't know if I would have gotten through it by myself.
Yeah. That was a lot of surgery. That was hard.
It was hard.
It was just hard to see all the pain that you were in and all the surgeries you had to have. It just broke my heart.
Yeah. But then at the same time, you would think, well, it's just your eye. It's not like your life. You'll be fine. Like, what? You lose your eye, you'll be fine. And, and I would go back and forth, like Satan in one, ear and then Christ in the other. But I'm like, no, but this is hard. I am not doing good. And I was in a support group of people with my condition. And I mean, people with one eye surgery are messed up. And so my doctor looked at me after like the fourth one and he said, you need to be sure you're talking to somebody. And it turns out like I'm his most complicated case of his whole career. And he's the best of the best in this mid-Atlantic area. And the last emergency surgery I had, he cried.
Wow.
You know, he didn't cry hard, but like I could see in his eyes, you know, he was so sad for me. Like he knew I was already so broken, but
Yeah. It seemed like it drew you closer to the Lord, though.
it did 100%
Yeah.
because, you know, and that sometimes makes you feel bad. Like, why is it in my most desperate moments do I cling to Christ? But in my moments that are just so happy, you know, you forget, like you don't need him as much.
I would
Yeah.
think
And
you're in situations like that where you're desperate and it just,
yeah,
yeah, my heart goes out to you because I scratched my cornea once because I used to wear contacts and I live in Arizona where it's so dry.
right.
I took it out, my contact out, and I scratched it, and it was so painful. I ended up having to go to the emergency room and get numbing drops. And as soon as I get those numbing drops in, I was like, because it was
I know.
painful. And I thought, how can something like that little cause so much pain? So
But your eyes are so sensitive. I mean, they have so many nerves. And to put it into perspective, after like my fifth surgery or so, I had a corneal abrasion and a third of my cornea was off. And I didn't even know
wow.
Yeah,
because I had so much pain for so long. I was just numb to it. And I was taking all this pain medicine to just get through the days. I got a stomach ulcer. It was awful. But when I went in, he said, oh my gosh, he said, I don't know how you didn't come in here. A third of your cornea is off, not just a scratch, like gone from all. I was on a regimen of drops, like 4 to 5 drops, 4 to 5 times a day. And all of that medicine caused it, just me opening and closing my eyes with all that medicine in there caused it to be disruptive. So they put like contact that stayed on. It's like a little Band-Aid to let it heal. But it's crazy. And it's just one of these things you never would think that could happen. It was not on my radar.
my brother Todd just had it during Thanksgiving, but I think they were able to fix his. And he didn't
Did
even
you
know
have
how
a
it
detached
happened.
retina?
Yeah, he didn't even know how it happened, though.
Well,
He had no idea. It just happened.
They do not happen often from trauma. I mean, they happen because the walls of your retina get weaker as you get older, and you can have something called lattice degeneration. People think that they think a little bit that if you've had LASIK, that you're more prone to it. But most of the time, it's just complete. It's a complete like spontaneous issue. So
yeah, I never wore contacts since then.
I'm like, yeah, you're done.
Not risking that
Yeah.
again.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing okay now, and we'll just continue to pray for you in that area. Because that's
thank you.
When you go through trauma, any type of trauma. That's what this podcast is about. You went through trauma.
Yeah,
you have to heal from it, and it's a process. And I mean, I'm still in trauma healing right now. So
it is. And then you have triggers and, you know, certain days, you know, I think of where I was last year at this time. And, you know, at one point I just was like in my room crying, like, why God? Like, what do you want from me? Like, when is it going to be enough? I can't do this much longer, you know? And I just remember, and there's this song, it's called Seasons by Hillsong. And it's like, God, if you're not done working, then I'm not done waiting. But I wanted to be done waiting, and I was done with the pain. And my mom said, you know, do you feel like you're being punished? You know, and I said, I know he doesn't punish us, right? But he is definitely doing something to me. Like I am working through a lot of things and, you know, a lot of maybe places in my life where I was veering off into a place that, you know, maybe he wasn't happy with. And it's nothing bad like drugs or adultery or anything, but even just, you know, acknowledging him and having him be such a presence in my life, I knew there was something more, and that one day I'll look back and I'll know exactly what it was. But in that fire, it was hard to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us sitting here have been through the fire and came out closer to the Lord. So
yeah,
definitely
he uses it
that to draw us closer to himself. So how long have
they
you
say.
The project, and how have the numbers and support increased over the years?
You know, when we started this project in 2021, we raised, I think, $12,000, and that was 125 widows that we were able to bless. And it's sounds like a lot of money, but just for perspective of what they get, it's like $35 of wholesale flowers, which if that would translate into something you would buy from a florist would be around $150.
Wow.
Once it's in a vase and arranged and everything. And then they get a bottle of wine and they get something sweet. And then they get some type of gift, like a small painting or jewelry or something, locally made. So the value of like what they get is close to $250 to $300. One of the girls in my committee, her perspective was interesting. She said, the thing about this is it's very over the top. It's not like they would even care if they just got 3 flowers because it's the thought, but it is kind of extra. And I love that about it. Like I said, I don't want them getting a crappy bouquet from the supermarket. They are getting something nice.
My mom said it was beautiful. Like she
Yes, like
loved it. It just touched her so much.
yeah. And it's like, no, we are honoring these ladies and they are getting the top of the top. We're not, I love that about it. And I know that's not necessary, but I just want them to really feel that appreciation and feel that love of it being much more than just an insignificant bouquet from the grocery store. Not that that doesn't matter. But there's a lot that goes on too in my driveway when people are making these. You're meeting people that you didn't know before. How did you come here? How did you get here? People read about it in the paper and they're new to Charlotte and they're like, wow, I just can't believe I found this. And then I've made so many friends. So it's really interesting. But the next year we raised about $25,000 and that covered 400 widows. And then this year, our goal was $50,000 for 800 widows. So there's a lot of other expenses that go into the operation, like porta potty rental, dumpster rental, tables, tablecloths, snippers, tons of things like that. So it's been nice to be able to, hopefully we raise the funds so that we're not paying out of our pocket for that, which we have done the last few years. And that's fine.
1,000 yet?
Yeah, we're close. Actually, somebody in town offered to match up to $10,000 and that would put us over our goal. But my hope is that this is something that I'm able to replicate in more cities. And so it might cost me more to be able to do that with websites and technology and legal fees, be able to go to somebody like you girls and say, hey, we want to do this. And I can say, okay, well, this is what you need to do. This is what I'm going to provide to you and walk through it with you and be able to give you some of the assets up front, because it's new and then charge you with raising gifts from the community or what have you and learning how it goes so that the next year you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, like I did that with my sister and who Brenda's talked about, who's gotten them to some of our aunts and her mom and able to order her vases, order the flowers, tell her how to do the flowers, send her the note card of what we do, tell her what we would like to have in it. And she's been able to do it. This is her 3rd year. She did 25 the first year, 60 to 70 last year, and she's doing 123 this year.
And she's in Pittsburgh. So
she's in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's awesome.
That is.
Mm-hmm. And then a woman saw we were on ABC World News, I think, with David Meir, and a woman from Minnesota saw it and she reached out to me and I said, can you reach back out to me like in the summer when I need to get through all these surgeries and everything and I would love to talk. And she called me and I took the call and we talked and she's doing this in her town for 60 widows. But she told me, she said, I prayed before I called you and I knew that if you called me back or if you answered, it was meant to be.
Wow. Wow. So this is very quickly.
Yeah, it's going to turn into.
Yeah. Well, it can. And like, that's my hope. And the interesting thing, we talked about the pain and living in a hard place. I think community is so important for so many people. And you see the gifts going to the widows, but I really feel like the gift is for those who are doing the serving. Yeah. There's a lot of healing that goes on in my driveway and a lot of women.
That's what the next question I was going to ask was.
Really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
This driveway, I'm sitting in it right now. It is full of people from all walks of life, whether it's a new person in town who knows nobody and is lonely, whether it's a divorced person who hates the holiday, or a single person who's never had a boyfriend on, Valentine's Day, or a widow who's lost their spouse, or there's a whole list of people. There's a woman that showed up and she told me that her son had died a year and a half ago, and that she was going to spend the rest of her life doing things to honor him. And she read about this and she drove 3 hours and she volunteered.
Wow. That is so, yeah. See, Valentine's Day it's just been a sad holiday for me because it's the week of my wedding anniversary. but it was
Oh,
also
yeah.
my mom and dad's week of their wedding anniversary. And then my dad since has passed. So
Right.
it's a very sad holiday for me. We have a neighbor that'll buy Karen and I like a chocolate heart, and he's always trying to do something nice because he feels kind of
That's
bad.
right, I forgot about that.
But
Oh,
yeah, so that was part of my question. So you just already answered that, where how has it helped, minister to the single and divorced and widows? Because for me, I mean, it's a sad holiday for me, so it would help me more to be giving as well on that day.
Yeah.
Oh, if
Yeah.
and the thing is, even for people that are married, like I am married and I love my husband, and admittedly, when you're in a relationship, you have like an expectation of what Valentine's Day is. And I'll be honest, he makes dinner, the same dinner every Valentine's Day. That's all I really want. But you wonder, like, oh, is he going to get me flowers or this or that? Since this project started, I have not thought one time about myself. And I think the neat thing about it is that we've kind of, with the people here in this community, of wives even going home to husbands, they're not thinking about themselves. And we've kind of flipped the script on it being something that is for people that have love, to being a holiday that we extend love and we extend grace to the people that don't have it.
Yeah, that's so great.
Yeah.
And well, it's a different way of thinking. And that thought for me has only started this year. Like that wasn't kind of what I was thinking at the beginning, but seeing it and seeing the community, seeing it get bigger and, hearing the stories and the connections, it really is. And I feel like that's what we're called to do.
Yeah. And in some strange way, God did use all that community, just like you said earlier, the community and them coming together and still doing the project to help you heal and be there for you with what you were going through medically.
Yeah, I look back now and it makes sense. And, I think he was protecting me from some things in my life. And I think that he was preparing me.
Yeah.
If this trial was going to come, he knew I needed the community. And so now I feel like, I still pray, like, what do you want from me? And then to see this project grow so organically, I feel like it's definitely the Holy Spirit telling me this is what he wants.
Yeah.
I just think it's amazing. I was going to ask you, like, what brought you in the first place to work with flowers? Like, did you just always? I mean, I'm terrible
Oh,
at anything.
I love flowers.
I can grow flowers. Or anything.
Well, Brenda knows my mom, and like my mom, I don't think she ever bought like a piece of furniture or decoration for our house. My dad did that. She just doesn't really care. She's like the easiest going lady in America. And I loved flowers, and I would pester her to death. Like, when are we decorating? When are we decorating for Christmas? When are we decorating for this? When are we going to get our flowers for the front yard? And then when I got old enough to drive, I would pester her so much. She would just give me like $20 and say, go and get stuff down. There's this little nursery next to Dairy Queen. Just go get it. And I would come home and I would plant it all. And I would buy flowers for her. And I loved flowers. And then in college, there were hydrangeas. Oh my gosh, I could get arrested for this probably, but there were hydrangeas in this one apartment complex that just like along the road. So it's probably like public property. But I lived there 1 year and I went there every like 2 weeks when they die, and I'd pick myself more flowers and I had them on my table. And it's a luxury for the most part, flowers are, but they really do make you feel better. And they just give you this little bit of something beautiful. That's part of the creation.
Flowers.
Yeah,
So like you said, it makes you.
Yeah, I've got flowers and plants and everything in my bedroom. I love it.
Yeah. The girl that interviewed me the first time, her name was Ruby Durham, right when we started, the cutest little firecracker thing. She reported good news in Charlotte, and I gave her flowers and thanked her for the interview. And she wrote me and she said, I've been buying flowers every week since you did that because they made me so happy when I came home.
Yeah, I love flowers too. I always had to plant them outside my house. My kids know I love flowers too.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to have a green thumb, but a lot of on my small business side, I love to do tutorials and teach people how to do things. I always thought, well, if I was as rich as Oprah, then I'd have flowers everywhere. And the reality is,
I tried to
you don't have to be.
Flowers once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you? I'd love to learn how to do that, like how to ring.
But being able to go to Trader Joe's or Publix or, one of your grocery stores and pick up $15 of things and making something beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that's neat. And I always, in the summer, I try to forage as much as I can and not buy them. But I've had people, babysitters, especially the older women that babysit, tell me, over the years how much they love that I always have flowers on my kitchen table.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Our podcast is to help our listeners heal from trauma and abuse, which we talked about a little bit earlier. We
Right.
went through trauma. I'm so thankful that you and I, Ashley, were raised with parents that were not abusive, and that we had
Yeah.
a grandmother that persevered through difficult times and was a role model for me personally. She lived every day with enthusiasm and joy in the Lord and serving others. Her loving kindness was passed down to our mothers and now to us. And our mothers are absolutely wonderful. For those of you listening that had abusive parents and are not sure what normal or an inspiring example is, I pray God can show you at least one person that was healthy in your life. Ashley, did you want to add anything to the importance of the beauty that can be passed down from generation to generation? And Ashley and I both agree we wanted to honor our grandmother in this podcast.
Yeah.
She was so inspiring to me. So,
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I don't know. It's easy in this day and age to get hung up on little things, to think that that woman raised 12 kids by herself. She never complained. You'd go to her house and she would always have the chips and cheese. That might be the only thing she had, but she knew we loved it, and she was on food stamps probably our whole life, or, some type of supplemental help. And, to think of sometimes the very, very bountiful lives that we have these days, it's so easy to not be grateful.
yeah.
And to think of her, she never complained. She was always there with all those grandkids. She was always, made you feel special.
Yeah. Always filled with joy. I don't know how many grandkids there are on that side, but that's just about
Oh, golly, like 1 million.
5.
I don't know. I think
Grandmother passed away in what year was that?
2007, 2008.
So yeah, she just inspired me. When I think of getting through what I've been through, I always think of who do I want to be the most like, but she just was always filled with joy, and she was always happy, and she always had so much energy, but it wasn't an annoying energy. It was an enthusiasm.
Right.
And it's just, when I think about
And she served God her whole life. I mean, she was driving Meals on Wheels till she died.
yeah,
That was probably part of her joy.
yeah. Yeah. She was just wonderful. So I definitely wanted to dedicate and honor her in this podcast.
She would love it. She would love to know what well, she does. Didn't they tell me that Grandma was pregnant with Aunt Jen at your mom's baby shower?
2 of my brothers are older than
Yeah.
so Mom and
So-
Grandma were pregnant at the same time.
It would have to be Todd and Jen, that Grandma didn't tell anyone. And since she was so tall, she could hide it. And then like a month after Aunt Bessie's shower, she had a baby. They're like, oh my, where did that come from?
I could see that.
Yeah. Because she didn't want to take Aunt Bessie's thunder.
Oh,
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing about your ministry. Can you tell our listeners how they can find your project and how they can help in any way? And then also media links that they can find.
Yeah. So I think if you just would maybe Google the Valentine's Widow outreach and my name, Ashley Manning, there would be a lot of articles and stories online. But I have a website. It's called Pretty Things by A.E. Manning. And I have all the information there and pictures. And actually, this is new today, but there's a company called Upworthy, and they're on social media. They have a lot of followers and they report on good stories.
Yeah, I follow them because I was so sick of bad news.
Yeah. So if you look at them today, I'm actually doing a collaboration with them from now until Valentine's Day. And they're highlighting this ministry and this outreach and encouraging others to give back and to, honor those who are hurting. So they're going to share a little bit about the outreach every day. And then we have a card that's on my website that I believe it says Upworthy card, and you can click on it. And it's just 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper that you print it on, and you fold it twice and it makes a card, and it gives our message. It says, you are celebrated today and every day. And then there's a line from a song called Rescue by Lauren Daigle. And it says, there's never been a moment you were forgotten. Happy Valentine's Day. And inside the card, we were hoping for it to be extended to widows, but the girl that I'm working with at Upworthy said she doesn't know widows. So what do you do if you don't know a widow? And so we extended it to say that in honor of this initiative, if you don't know widows, then we ask that you would extend a gift or something, on Valentine's Day to somebody who might need a little extra love and compassion.
I just found it because
she knows what you look like now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
So there it is.
I'm going to post your picture on there, and our listeners are going to be like, okay, because you got the blonde hair, blue eyes, Norwegian side, and I look like my dad.
Yes, you do.
Polish side. So yeah, it's funny because my brother, Oh, his kids were blonde hair and blue eyes, and he lived in Arizona for a while, and our kids were little together, and they'd go to the dentist, and the dentist would be like, "Are you sure they're related?"
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's like blonde, blue, to
But
completely.
you're tall. How tall are you?
I'm 5'8".
I'm 5'8" too. I mean, we're tall, at least.
Yeah.
That's grandma's.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's really neat that this, not necessarily secular, but not Christian
They're great. Though.
outlet is picking this up and they're sharing it and they're encouraging people to do it and then tag them so that we can encourage other people to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's really neat. The last thing I'll say is my house is old. It was built in the 70s and older, and we've renovated it. But there was a wing added to the side of the house by the second owners who lived here the longest. And she actually ran a nonprofit that was like a prayer nonprofit. And she worked with Billy Graham, the evangelist, who lived here in Charlotte. And she helped to plan and execute and pray for the crusade. So in my office, there's a big world map, huge. And that was called the prayer room. And my neighbors, who are all in their mid 80s, they said that he was here in my house a lot. And that the prayer that happened like in these rooms is significant. And I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
That's right. He lived in North Carolina.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And then I lived in this house for 10 years, and it's been the last 2 that I work in there. But this is even more telling of how God works. There's a ADA accessible bathroom right off from my office. So I have like the prayer room, that's my office, and the room next to it was like their offices. And that's where I have my shop, like of my coolers and all the stuff. And then there's a bathroom, and there's a stained glass window in the bathroom. And it says, "He pastures his flock among the lilies of the valley."
Wow.
That's great.
It's powerful.
It is, because like he knew that I would be here and that I would pasture people with flowers.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Isn't that incredible? Like, what are the odds? And goodness, I've looked at this stained glass for 10 years and it didn't all come together until like the last year for me.
Wow.
And I wondered, like, why would she pick that scripture, Song of Songs? Like, he pastures his flock among the lilies of the valley. Like, wonder why. And the stained glass is lilies of the valley.
Wow,
that's amazing.
That is.
Yeah. I was in there and I thought, man, God knew. He knew I would be here.
Heard that song Blessings by Laura Story?
Oh, of course. I love that song.
I do too. Because I used to have migraines and I have insomnia, but I love what she talks about, that sometimes it is in those nights that I have horrible insomnia that I feel like God speaks to me something that I needed to hear that night. So I always feel like there is something good that comes from things that for us can seem like pointless, I need
Right.
I do.
You never would have thought. And the people that we bought this house from, so there was an owner between this family and us. And the woman who owned it, Lance Crackers, that's like, the packs of crackers. She was the daughter of the Lance Cracker family, one of the daughters, the heiresses to it. So was worth a fortune. Mary Lance Van Every Sisk. And the family that bought it from her, they were going to tear it down. They just wanted the lot. And then something happened with work and they ended up moving, and we bought it and did not tear it down. And then to think that might not have been there.
Yeah.
It's just really neat.
Yeah.
It's really neat. It's really God.
It is. It's all God.
The hands and feet of Jesus. It's insane when I think about that room. And when we made it into my studio, it had like dark wood and it had red church carpet, legit red, like that real low pile red carpet. And that's what it was. And there's a big ceiling in there, and there's a big wooden cross on the mantle.
Wow. I would love that.
Yeah. Well, the cross wasn't here when we bought the house, but if I look, I can send you a picture, because when she listed it, it was in the pictures. And then her husband got cancer and died quickly. And so they had the house on the market for a lot of money. And then I guess she didn't really need the money. So this guy from New York offered like cash to be done tomorrow. And she took it. And then she moved to Atlanta and she died in her sleep like 2 weeks later.
Oh my gosh.
Like she just wanted to be with her husband.
Like, yeah, it happens a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they weren't that old, like 70s probably. Wow. But then I think, of how just to hear even of her legacy in this area and things to think of how happy she probably is to see, her room still being used for his glory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Used for good things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the Upworthy thing is neat because, I hope people do it. And I'm going to try to press forward like in the next few days and encourage people to do it. Print the card and drop off something to a neighbor, just letting them know you love them. And it doesn't have to be a widow. Just there's lots of people that need love, like you girls. You're not widows per se, but you could probably use some extra love on Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. It's a hard day because I try not to get on social media that day because
Oh, right.
posting
Like you don't want to see everybody out
Right.
schmoozing there.
Yeah.
I wonder if you really ask the whole world, like men probably definitely, there's probably like what, 10% of marriages, the guy actually is into it. And then the 90% are just like, oh, I have to do something, like the flamboyant man is like, oh, like putting rose petals everywhere. And then the other ones are like, oh shit, I got to go to the grocery store, get a card.
Better pick up some chocolate or something.
Yeah. Well, so like who really does love Valentine's Day? It's like a lot of not met expectations, from women, and then men get annoyed, and then people that don't have somebody get sad. One of the ladies that got something last year, she actually was an old coworker of mine's mom, and she went to the grocery store that day and she called her daughter on the way home and she said, oh, the only thing I see in there was men buying things for their wives or their love.
I'm scrambling at the last minute.
Yeah. They're all in there. In her mind, all she saw was men buying things for their wives in her head. And then she came home from the grocery store and she had her gifts were on her front porch. And she said it felt like they came from heaven.
Mm. Oh,
It's
wow.
like God giving it to her.
Yeah.
And he did, kind of, So neat to think of, that little gesture that can just turn their days like, shoot.
Yeah. You've helped me so much to change my perspective on it because I literally do not like it.
Yeah. Well, maybe you're like, I don't know what, that to hear you really don't like it that much. And so for you, it's way more than just a holiday. It's an anniversary and it's your parents' anniversary and it's a holiday and it's painful. Yeah. I hope that, the more people talk about it and even make considerations for it not being the holiday that way. And we maybe in our head just think of it now as the holiday to show love.
Yeah.
And not expect it from anybody.
That's what Jesus does is he loves others. And I learned to love other people, whether they love me back or not.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest
That's hard.
things I had to learn.
Yeah.
So that's the greatest commandment. That's why I talk about that at the beginning. We're supposed to love others without expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
I know. The only real joy and lasting joy you have is from Christ. Social media is like the devil, and
that's why Karen and I never post the nice stuff like you post because we can't really stand social media. We'll be honest with you, but we know we have to because then people can't see what we're doing. And we're getting people off the streets. We're doing all this important stuff and want to get a shelter up, but we don't like social media enough to like. Ugh.
I know. I think that's why these Meta and Upworthy, I think that's why they're like grabbing onto this because it's an actual good story that came from social media. We started in COVID when that's all you had.
Oh God. And what's so exciting is we're so far apart. Like I'm in Arizona and you're there, but God's using people all over the country to just do just these acts of kindness and to help others. And not everybody's doing it. We're in a crazy world and COVID messed a lot of people up, but I'm so grateful for you, Ashley, and what you're doing. And you're just such a blessing. I'm so honored to just say, have you as my cousin. And
well, it's my pleasure. I'm still so humbled that it's even gotten to be something as amazing as it is. I'm grateful every day for it.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing God's work.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should.
I slept in my clothes and I'm still wearing them. And I have my hair in French braids.
I remember doing that
yesterday.
I remember doing that, seriously.
Yeah. I'm like, you guys can't sleep in your clothes. That's gross. And then I sleep in my clothes like 3 days a week.
Hey, that's what you got to do sometimes.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm just sitting in this car. This is the quietest it's been in my whole day.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening. And until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.